Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
Hey, this is Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. I actually, in my ear real quick for my engineer, I hear myself, and I wasn't hearing any of that music. So I think that was on me. I hit some buttons wrong, but I am here all day with you today. I'm actually back in with you tomorrow. Chad has the next few days off. He's been working very hard for you, of course. So it makes sense to give the guy a few days off, and I'm always thrilled to be in. Chad will be back next week. I have to start by talking about what's going on in Atlanta. And I'm not sure that, I could also talk about, I guess, John Bolton, but I'd rather talk about something that I think is more important first, and then eventually we'll get to it. I will go immediately to the president's comments, though. The president of the United States gave a TV interview last night, and in that interview, he touched on a wide range of topics. He starts out in this clip talking about George Floyd. He says a little bit before the clip that I'm actually going to play that he felt like it was pretty easy to watch that video and feel terrible about what you saw in the death of George Floyd, as so many of us have come to understand in the last few weeks. But the Atlanta case is probably a bit more complicated, to say the very least about it. But here is the president speaking about both of those things last night. All right, this is the Craig Collins Show. Still trying to figure out some kinks here. Let's see if we can get this to work, because I have audio sitting in front of me, and I want to make sure to play it for you correctly so you hear it. Let's see if we can keep trying to get it to go right here. But let's try to get the audio of the president.
I haven't met any, because I deal with law enforcement all the time, and I just left a big group of the top sheriffs and law enforcement people in the country, and nobody was sticking up for what he did. The event that took place yesterday I thought it was a terrible situation, but you can't resist a police officer. And, if you have a disagreement, you have to take it up after the fact. It was a very sad, very, very sad thing. And look, you take a look, it was out of control. The whole situation was out of control. I heard today and just got a report that the police officer's lawyer said that he heard a sound like a gunshot, and he saw a flash in front of him. So that's an interesting, I don't know that I would have necessarily believed that, but I will tell you that's a very interesting thing, and maybe that's so. They're going to have to find out. It's up to justice right now. It's going to be up to justice. I hope he gets a fair shake, because police have not been treated fairly in our country. They have not been treated fairly.
A lot said there by the president during that brief. It's about a minute of audio. And before I even start to comment it on my own, I kind of want to react about just the idea that right now, any conversation we have about this or anything, and especially if you go on social media and try to have the conversation there, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend you do, I think people hear a lot more than the words we actually say. And I don't know what that is. I don't know why that's the world we live in right now. But if I say a simple sentence, like the case in Atlanta is more complicated than the death of George Floyd, people may get upset and may attack that simple statement, but I'm pretty sure it's just factual. I'm pretty sure that the situation that occurred there, where police dealt with an individual who was physically trying to fight back in a way, certainly was running away at the moment when he was shot and killed. He had taken a taser, as probably most of you know and have seen the video at this point, and he was turning the taser toward police officers. And so even the conversation being had by the president about how a police officer might have mistaken that for a gun, it's fairly hard for any of us to say what isn't true today. And actually, just talking to my producer before the show, it's also interesting to go back and look at the press conference being given and the fact that so much proof is being presented. Well, the mention of charges is also out there. This is not the time for a trial. Usually the press conference is simplistic in telling us what is going on as far as potential trial, potential charges. It doesn't go into detail on potential proof of those certain things. So it's very complicated. It's very odd. And then we get this news last night out of Atlanta. Police officers calling off their work, calling off the job because they just don't feel like they're being supported at all. And that ends with the last statement by the president saying police officers in some ways, in a lot of ways, are probably being treated unfairly. And look, even that sentence, even saying that sentence out loud, not just the president, but myself, and understanding the complicated issues that are at play on all sides of this thing, makes you wonder if people can hear that sentence correctly, that police officers may not be treated fairly right now. It's not discounting anyone else that's dealing with or peacefully protesting what they feel to be just as valid of issues. No one statement takes away from a different statement, but I think it is true, and especially in the case of Atlanta right now, and police officers don't show up for work. That actually gets somewhat attacked or somewhat refuted by the department itself. The Atlanta Police Department putting out on social media that earlier suggestions that multiple officers from each zone had walked off their job were inaccurate. So the department saying it's not necessarily true. It was experiencing a higher than unusual call out with incoming shifts, but they had enough resources to maintain it. That's their social media saying that. But then actually I saw a report about people listening to the police scanner in Atlanta last night and hearing a lot of this. This is a quote that people heard from police dispatchers. "We are not answering 911 calls right now due to personnel issues." I'm not sure if that's confirmed, but that is a report coming out that the scanner was able to pick up audio of that kind, which would make you curious about just what is the goal in all this, I guess. And I think that's always kind of been a part of the conversation, maybe not a part of the conversation everyone felt terribly comfortable having all the time, but certainly a really important part. What is the goal in all of this? And in every facet of whether it be peaceful protesting, certainly at times what seemed to be very unfortunate rioting and looting that was taking place, every single step that we take here, I'm not sure that anyone truly has a real set of correct, hopeful, end goal-ish things that come from all this. Because if police stop going to work, if police officers in Atlanta or anywhere in this country feel, and I think a lot of us might say rightfully so, that they're worried that they wouldn't have the protections that they need to have in order to do their job effectively. If you do get in an even different situation than the one we saw in Atlanta, I mean, look, let me say it this way. And again, I'm going to try to, as many times as I can throughout the show today, when I talk about this, because I'm just worried, I'm going to try to reinforce the idea that I want you to hear just the words I'm saying and not add other words at any time that you think I'm saying, because I'm not. I'm saying very simple things. If we have a different video come out in the future that's even more a situation where you can't really define whether or not a police officer were in danger, whether or not lethal force was correct, and I know that everyone's going to have an opinion about the case that's going on right now in Atlanta, but if more video of other instances comes out, when do we all start to realize that it might be too hard for us as individual people logging into a social media platform or a YouTube to really understand the nuances of these situations happening in person that we're not at, and understand that the correct way for all this stuff to happen is through the court system, is through, a bunch of the people that exist in these branches, in these locations, the law enforcement officials, the people that work, that they respond to every single day. There's a system in place. If we try to help change the system, and if even the president signing an executive order to change some of the way that policing happens aids in making the system better, we then eventually have to trust it, right? You can't continue to think that it's up to us, the people on Twitter, to decide what is and isn't okay, what murder charges are deserved and which ones aren't, and move forward that way. That's not our role in this. It's a very complicated issue for sure. I really hope that you're hearing just the simple points I'm making, but that is, to me, the most complicated situation that I see in all this. If what we see in Atlanta continues to happen, both the more complicated case, the response to that case, the charges that exist, and then the walking off from officers of their work. So then there essentially was a quite depleted police force, if you believe a lot of reports last evening. I don't think anyone wants us to be in a world where you don't have police. And I say that knowing that there's such a thing as the defund police campaign. But I truly still to this day believe that anyone who supports that right now might not fully understand what they're calling for. And the people that do fully understand what they're calling for, those people might not feel the same way if they get what they want. But we'll see how that all goes. One last thing, since I do have to mention it here, the John Bolton book was also discussed as the president was on television last night. Look, there's been people on both sides of the aisle. I was actually surprised. Last night, I was flipping through a bunch of different channels, and I saw some things on channels that I usually don't watch a whole lot of about just how terrible of a human John Bolton is and how odd this whole thing is, and certainly how a whole bunch of this is at least protected high security information that we probably shouldn't be throwing in a book to make dollars off of. That's all very true, but I saw that on both sides of the aisle, that the feeling on John Bolton himself is not positive. But let's hear what Trump had to say last night on television talking about the book.
He broke the law. He was a washed-up guy. I gave him a chance. He couldn't get Senate confirmed, so I gave him a non-Senate confirmed position where I could just put him there, see how he worked. And I wasn't very enamored. He went into the Middle East. He was one of the big guns for let's go into Iraq, and that didn't work out too well, and I was against that a long time ago before I was ever even thinking about doing what I'm doing now. But he was one of the people who wanted to go into Iraq. When I asked him about it, I said, about a month in, when he was about a month in, I said, what do you think? Do you think you made a mistake there? No, I don't think so. I said, explain that one. So the terrible thing that he did, but he broke the law. Very simple. I mean, as much as it's going to be broken, this is highly classified. That's the highest stage. It's highly classified.
That's true. It's highly classified information. He has no approval from the White House to put out a book. He's just putting one out. And a lot of people on the side of the aisle that feel that the president did do things wrong. And there's a lot of really shocking things in this book that I'm not sure if they're true, but they are shocking. I will say that about it. But people who obviously would feel that, people on a certain side of the aisle that hate the president so much, even they are saying, if this is true, why didn't you talk about this sooner? Why did you refuse to testify? Why did you do so many other things? Why is it simply in a book that you're going to make a bunch of cash off of and nowhere else? Why is this the way in which John Bolton has decided to share this information with us? Because he's going to make money. And honestly, anytime anyone puts information into a book, I don't know that they always fully feel like everything they put in there has to be 100% true. That's all I'm going to say. I have no idea what is and isn't true. Obviously, some of the stuff is classified, though, so that part's true and shouldn't be out there. But for the stuff that's scandalous and maybe not true, I don't know why this wouldn't come out a different way than here. How many more books do you think come out? That's my question for you. I got to take a break. A lot more coming up. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show today. Chad back next week. Thrilled to be here with you for the next few days. We're going to talk about Father's Day a little bit because we should do some things other than the craziness that is the news every single day. Quick break and a lot more.
Experiencing separation anxiety? That's dumb. Check out Chad 24/7 at his website, ChadBensonShow.com, and on iTunes, free. The Chad Benson Show. Never feel lonely again.
Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. Thrilled to be here with you for the next couple days. Chad back next week. I want to talk about some lighter, sillier things on the show because that's a way in which we all have to live right now. I think it's important. Denny's is making a Father's Day move that makes tremendous sense. By the way, I have a bunch of thoughts on some of the other companies that have made changes recently, and my thought on all of it is that it's a business decision, and I will explain that better. I think you kind of know what other companies I'm talking about after our next break, after I come back in the next few minutes or so, next half hour, whatever it would be. But I just feel like a lot of companies are making business decisions right now. Case in point, Denny's. Denny's is going a really cool road to me. They are bringing back what is called a bacon bouquet. The bacon bouquet is for Father's Day, and it is exactly what it sounds like. And I'm desperately hungry just reading about it. It's $25, which to me doesn't sound terribly high, although it is bacon. I don't know how many slices you get in the bouquet. It better be a lot more than 12. But you can get one this weekend. You order it, $25 worth of Denny's. You get it through a couple different places, and a bouquet gets sent to your house that's not flowers at all. I don't know who thought of it first, like the edible version of the flower bouquet, because I remember getting like cookies as a kid. Someone would send them and they would be all arranged in a certain way. And, even though to me, I've never been a person that wanted someone to hand me flowers, if you hand me a food product in flower form, that's way better. That's a way better situation. I can handle that and very much enjoy to get it. So the Denny's Bacon Bouquet is the thing I most want to highlight, the product, the move made by a company that I'm happiest about. and I want to talk about as much as possible today. Also, I saw out there, and this is just kind of an odd thing, that Alexa and Siri, two smart devices that we have, two smart assistants, whatever you want to call them, that we have in our phones or in our houses, they're capable of doing a lot of things. Although a new study said that something you should not ask them to do is try to save a life. I guess this was a real thing. You could say something like into Siri and or Alexa, hey, there's something really serious going on. Can you help save me? As opposed to, I don't know, maybe dialing the phone and calling the police if they're hopefully still available to make those kinds of life-saving moves. Some people turn to their smart device, and a study said not terribly reliable in being the solution to this. Alexa came in at 19% successful in just attempting to mimic some of those situations. Google doing the best, actually, for just simply medical advice, 56% of the time, giving you something valuable. Alexa, not going to do that so well, and they're just okay, quote, for if you're calling and asking them to do something important, something serious with you. So as we look, I guess, if we have to, for alternative solutions to policing, don't turn the way of smartphones and smart devices, because out of the University of Alberta in Canada, they're not going to make the right calls for you. Researchers asked them 123 different critical first aid questions, and most of the time, they didn't do a good job. So that is out there. That's a thing to consider, to think about. Actually, coming up in just a bit, too, I want to talk more about baseball. MLB and the players are going back and forth like crazy every single day. There's new developments on that. So we will have what we understand to be the latest as far as we go there. And the hot takes from the baseball world are as hot as anything else, I think. They're as difficult as any other area as far as people having, in the middle opinion. You either feel like everyone should be absolutely playing right now, or you feel like no one should. So we'll figure that out and a lot more coming up. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
Kind of. Well, no, probably not even kind of. This is Craig Collins filling in for Chad Benson. He is back next week, taking a few well-deserved days off. I am hanging out with you throughout the rest of the week, and then actually I'll be back on Monday too. So glad to be a part of your next few days. I will start by just mentioning some unemployment numbers. Unemployment, another 1.5 million Americans filed for benefits this week. That is, again, continuing to be a historical amount of individuals who are struggling right now financially. That means 45.7 million people, as of just today's numbers released, more than the entire population of some countries, including Argentina, have tried to join the U.S. unemployment rolls since the crisis started 3 months ago. The pandemic, the economic shutdown, whatever words you want to call for it, the COVID-19 response. That's a lot of individuals. And there's certainly debate and will continue to happen for the next month and a half, I guess, as to what the correct next step is as far as getting people back to work. There's a lot of things that you'll hear kind of floated out there, but I do think it's the right time to come up with a solution that makes sense, whether it's helping more companies, whatever you're doing, because we need to find a way to get everybody back to work, and that is not necessarily getting everybody more pay while not working, although, of course, that's something that we'll debate for quite a while, but just providing you the information, the latest, the unemployment numbers still not awesome. Cream of Wheat is going to join the growing list of companies that is contemplating and or officially changing its information. I think right now B&G Foods has their imagery for their product under immediate review. If you don't know what the Cream of Wheat visual looks like, it's certainly something that I think might fall in line with some of the other brands. It's two individuals on a box that says Cream of Wheat. One is an African-American man who is holding a pot that he would cook cream of wheat in. The other one is a white female, but they are contemplating changing that because they feel that it is in line with what the other companies feel that, it's racially insensitive. This would be Aunt Jemima, Uncle Ben's, and Mrs. Butterworth, who are already changing those things. My take on this is nuanced, I guess, more than today's day and age might let us make it be nuanced. Because, one, I'm not in the groups that may be offended by this. So when I say out loud that I didn't really mind the older versions of the logos, I am going to say that with the caveat that I'm aware that what I look like might be part of the reason that I didn't mind about the previous logos. And I see all the people say different things in social media, things like, man, we hate that the Twitter mob is once again changing something, which is in and of itself, if you just take it out of this situation and macro, like any world in which Twitter can complain and get something to change, it is weird. Sometimes it's good. Every so often, the fact that the internet is a place where people can all come together, once in a while, they can get something right. 99% of the time, they're probably overreacting to things. I mean, people lose jobs, get fired for all kinds of stuff. I have another story in front of me about how TV executives are going to comb social media profiles before hiring anyone moving forward. That's not just the actors. I think that's pretty much anyone, because if they get a sense of some sort of bias, some sort of problem on a social media profile, they know that it's only months, it's only some amount of time till the Twitter mob comes after us for this, so we have to change it. I don't think that's a good place to be in as a society either, that anything and everything we've ever done has to be scrutinized to the highest degree, and if you haven't lived the perfect life, the perfect human life, you don't deserve a job, according to this report. But I'll get to that in a bit. To go back to the cream of wheat conversation, go back to the companies changing what they feel is racially insensitive packaging, racially insensitive, the name of their product. I honestly think this is just a business decision. That's what I think it is. And I'm not trying, again, to be insensitive to anyone. I'm just being honest. If you're a company in 2020 right now with the conversations that are being had at every level of our society, and you have a product that may offend some people, and you change the name of it, but you don't actually change the taste of the product, you're probably going to do better with sales than worse. And honestly, if you get saluted, I don't know if anyone remembers this, but this is the best comparison I can make. When Colin Kaepernick had that Nike deal, and he put out a bunch of products when he wasn't playing football anymore and was seen more as a person, a person fighting for a cause that he believed in, and a lot of people supported that cause, he did well. His product did well, and everyone saluted Nike for being woke and in on the Colin Kaepernick message at the time. And I took a step back and thought to myself, whether or not, and I can never tell you that companies just strictly aren't woke. I won't say that. I have no idea how woke they were. But if you sell a product from a guy who's currently not playing football and sell it incredibly well as a business move, that's a pretty interesting move. I would call that a major financial success, no matter what message you're trying to give or not give. And certainly a lot of people there was a lot of backlash for that one. So the Colin Kaepernick example, not perfect at all. A lot of people upset with that. A lot of people turning away from that brand. And maybe that might happen with some of these cases as far as the long-running products like an Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben's product go, Mrs. Butterworth, whoever, I guess now cream of wheat maybe being a part of that. But in all honesty, it's syrup. If you like the taste of it on your pancakes, if you like the taste of it on your waffles, you might still buy it. I mean, to me, there's a bunch of different kinds that fall in there in those product categories, and a lot of them taste kind of the same. I don't know who I'm offending now. I don't know who's upset with me at this point, but I don't think I could blind taste test different syrups and be successful. That's what I'm saying. And so if you change the name or not in order to I think, maybe help the product sell better, the reality of all that is, if you put it in front of me and I pour it on my pancakes, that's how I live my life. I'm just going to consume the product and not really worry about anything else. But I do get, I guess, some of the frustration when you then apply what has been a lot of what we've dealt with in just all kinds of parts of our society, that the internet version of what is right and wrong seems to permeate our society more than anyone ever thought it would, right? Like more than anyone ever thought. When these social media products first came out, I don't think anyone thought that athletes and any kind of individuals could just get fired from jobs because of what they put on that platform. That actually would be a joke. I don't think most people even knew they existed for a long time while they were out and being used by mostly college-age kids before eventually being these behemoths that they are. But now, essentially, you're more judged by what you put on the internet than what you do in real life. Do you think if someone stood on a street corner right now and screamed a ton of the stuff that people have gotten in trouble for saying on social media, that they'd get in any trouble whatsoever? No. The answer is no, because if someone goes to the street corner and does that and doesn't get filmed, I guess, and popped up on a YouTube, it's going to be a freedom of speech thing, and everyone's just going to ignore the crazy guy in the corner. But if you type it into 120 characters and put it on the internet, your whole life could change, because you might get fired and a bunch of other things might happen. And that, I get that frustration. I get that anger. I don't know when and where we need to apply it, but just more importantly, I totally understand that that's not, again, the right way for us to live our lives, right? Let's move on to baseball. One thing that I think maybe most people could agree, maybe it's a great Father's Day gift. It would be great to see baseball. I know that everybody's not a fan. I've talked to some people who are like, that's a slow sport. It's a boring sport. But look, not having baseball or having it, for everyone that's not involved in the financial side, anyone that's not an owner, a player, any of that, we want to see it. We want it to be a part of our society. And so it's sort of dumbfounding that we can't find a way to have it. And I laugh as I say that, because I just don't totally get why we can't have it. I get that someone's going to lose a bunch of money. And if you follow this at all, it's back and forth. It's like $1 billion. That's the difference between how much the players want and how much the owners want. And when I say numbers like that, I'm always tempted to reference Dr. Evil from the Austin Powers movies, but I'm pretty sure that's a dated reference now. But $1 billion to me is a lot, and maybe to a lot of people is. But for Major League Baseball, I think it's a manageable number, as crazy as that sounds, especially when you look at the fact that their playoff television deal is worth billions, or at least $1 billion. So, you know, it seems like if you get a lot of playoff baseball on television and you own an organization, you can make back the money for maybe not having butts in seats this year, because apparently we can't go to baseball games and sit 6 feet apart, which would be cool if we could do that, but we can't. So I guess we have to figure out a different way here. But also just the fact, and I will say this, if I'm supporting either side, at times I more understand the players than the owners, just because the way this has gone. One, Manfred is the worst commissioner in all of sports, and probably one of the worst baseball's ever seen, in just my opinion, because he makes these weird sort of threats socially. He makes these weird threats via interviews, and then he winds up going back on them as soon as somebody calls his bluff. He's terrible at negotiating. But in the 4 offers sent from the owners to the players, 3 of them had identical financial numbers. It had different math, different amounts of games, different confusing things, but the same end result of being paid for about 50 games of baseball, no matter how many they were going to play. The most recent offer from the owners involved 60 games of pay, although I think players would still like to see more games at this point in the season, because if we get things going in a few weeks, you get baseball started up, you might be able to play more than 60. But we are getting closer and closer to that just being a reality in all this. And I would be frustrated if 3 out of the 4 times someone came to me with an offer, it was the same. You know, if words were written down differently, if they were testing my intelligence, that's what that feels like. I actually told this story the other day to a friend. I remember as a little kid vividly going with my uncle to help him buy a car. And I wasn't going to help. That's what he told me, but I was like 6. I wasn't going to be involved in that process. But I have this vivid memory of it because I thought my uncle was a special human. Like, he was a god to me in a way. And I thought, okay, I'm going to watch a master negotiate an incredible price on a ridiculously cool car. And what actually happened was a sales guy trying to trick him on how much his trade-in would be worth. So 3 different times the numbers for his car changed. And as a 6-year-old, I was like, wow, he just got that car for $6,000 cheaper. But then the trade-in value changed. And my uncle eventually crumpled up the napkin and threw it at the guy. And he goes, I'm not bad at math. Come up with an option that's not different, that's different from the other ones. And that is essentially what the baseball owners are doing. They're trying to see if maybe some of the players eventually get confused about the math. And guess what? They have not. This is Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. Got a lot of things to talk about all over the place today, kind of the way I normally am when I fill in. But Chad Benson back next week. Come on back after this.
He, she, it. Lucy is a girl.
Point of personal privilege. Please do not use gendered language to address everyone.
Shut up, boo. Ain't nobody got time for this.
This is The Chad Benson Show.
Craig Collins filling in on The Chad Benson Show. Chad, back with you next week. I want to talk about something I saw recently on the internet, on the social media, just because it both horrified and entertained me. And that's kind of what the internet's for, right? If you say that sentence about something you see on the internet, it was probably a good posting by whoever put it up. That horrified and entertained me. That's hitting the ball out of the park as far as they're concerned. This comes from onlinegaming.com. They commissioned what they called a 3D rendering of what happens to your body if you binge watch a bunch of TV. If you binge watch Netflix, I think is the brand they threw out there, which they're probably not thrilled about that right now. Netflix is like, come on, guys. You could have mentioned anybody. But they put out a 3D rendering. I'm not sure how much science or medical advice went into this thing, but I'll just give you the long and short of it. It's bad. If you sit around for a long time watching TV and doing nothing else, it's not good for your health. This is kind of mean, though, as I read through this and look at this image, because in all honesty, a lot of us during the time when our economies weren't really operating, when we couldn't go anywhere, what were we supposed to do? So this is almost like, I don't mean to say this truthfully. This is very sarcastically said. This is Netflix shaming us. I'm getting Netflix shamed by onlinegambling.com for the decisions I made when I stayed in my house over the last few months because nothing was open. But anyway, it shows the long-term effects in your body and your mind are damaging. It can change your posture. It can increase your likelihood of a ton of very serious illnesses. You'll get rounded shoulders. You'll have a lot of bad things happen. You'll certainly put on some weight. It is going to cause bloodshot eyes, which I had never really contemplated. I mean, to be honest, like if you know someone who binge watches a lot of things, maybe it's someone in the family, maybe it's one of your kids, or maybe it's just a buddy of yours. If they come out of the living room with bloodshot eyes, now's the time to kick them outdoors. Now's the time to turn off everything and send them to some other part of the house to do something other than sit and chomp popcorn, because I don't think that's ever happened to me. I don't think I've ever looked at myself, and maybe I'm just one of the better ones here. Maybe I've only done a 3-4 hour binge and not a 10. But the moment that you're struggling so much that the eyes are going, I think that's the time. They do recommend some ideas for ways in which to counteract. This is so silly. I love the fact that we need to put all this out there in the world. It's sort of like directions on a Pop-Tart. If you don't know, there are directions on the box of Pop-Tarts on how to make that product. In the same vein, online gambling says, here are some tips for making your binge better. Exercise, maybe during it, maybe after, maybe before. I don't know, at some point in your life. Don't have a poor diet, and don't just sit around. Don't have a sedentary lifestyle. Those are tips. Those are really good. Those are very strong things for us to know and consider. I don't know. As I read it, though, and as I told you, I think I found it in the New York Post, I feel like it's kind of shaming us. Because, come on, what were most of us doing when you couldn't go anywhere? We were sitting and watching a bunch of TV. I saw a bunch of things my wife wanted to watch, which I, to this day, now don't understand why I have so much knowledge in my brain about how a makeover works. But I've seen a lot of makeovers. And now apparently I have to feel bad about not just the information I got from that binge watching, but also the damage that was done to so much of my body. Moving on, there is a new study that decided which games that we play have the most skill and which games have the most luck. This is actually just a poll. People were asked, is this luck, is this skill? And they decided Cards Against Humanity, underrated game. Not a game for all of us to play. I'm certainly not recommending it to your next family gathering, but read the directions, read the rules, and play it. 15% of people say it's skill, 19% say luck. I can't believe anyone weighed in, because essentially that's just a sarcastic, comedy-based card game. Uno, 26% of people say that's luck. 52 say luck, 26 say skill. I think Uno has some skill. I'm just going to say blackjack, 35% skill, 44% luck and or can't do math. No kidding. Clue, 46% skill, 23% luck. When's the last time you played Clue, the board game? Connect 4, 49% skill, 21% luck. You should mostly draw. I don't think you should, if you're an adult with an equally minded adult, lose or win at Connect 4 a whole bunch, but you never know. You can get tricked. Poker, 54% say skill, 28 say luck, No one apparently has seen the movie Rounders starring Matt Damon because 100% skill. I play poker. I totally think it's skill. Scrabble, 76% skill. Checkers, 77. And the ultimate game of skill and not luck, if you want to play it at home, if you want to, break it out sometime, is chess. 82% of people agree that that's certainly a skill-based activity. Only 4% say luck, and the rest apparently no opinion whatsoever. The 4% who say luck in chess have definitely never won a single game of chess, and they're just mad about it. But it's interesting to me that we would debate these kind of things. I actually kind of think scientists are bored. I don't know if I've talked about this before on this program, but I've certainly talked about it on my own. I think that a lot of the studies I've seen that are silly, and you might hear more of them throughout the show today, it's just because scientists got bored. They didn't know what to do like the rest of us, so they started studying things like chess. This is Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. Got a lot more in store for you. Chad is back next week, so I'm thrilled to be with you today, tomorrow, and I think even Monday.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
Craig Collins filling in for Chad Benson today, talking with you, and be thrilled to be here. Chad back next week, actually. I'm going to start off in a world where I'm always unsure if I should say all the things I think, and yet, darn it, it's America, so I'm just going to say the things I think no matter what. More information breaking about one of the officers involved in the Atlanta shooting that happened the other day, the two police officers being Garrett Rolfe and then Devin Brosnan. Devin actually at one point was mentioned during District Attorney Paul Howard's statement saying that he was going to testify against his fellow officer. And then his own attorney had to come out and say that's not accurate. They're not sure if maybe someone needs to be disbarred for the information that was leaked before it was accurate. But Don Samuel, representing Devin Brosnan, says no, that is not accurate. He is not going to be testifying as of right now, and not sure why they think he's going to be a state witness. So that's already getting messy. Now this, though, his attorney is also saying that he suffered a concussion during the altercation with Rayshard Brooks that unfortunately ended with Rayshard Brooks being shot as he ran away, certainly after a altercation, a confrontation, whatever you want to call it, and then Rayshard getting a taser and turning it toward the officers before one of the officers, not Devin, decided to use lethal force. Look, in this whole situation, I think part of what we're going to have to digest and understand, and it's going to take a lot more time than is ever convenient for social media, is all of the details. I know you can watch the video. I know you can see what you believe to be the entirety of that story, but I think in all honesty, it's good that our legal system works differently than our social media, and things have to go through certain steps in order to have an end result. I don't know what the end result will be, but it might be better for at least some of us to say there is a chance that what we understand and see and know so far may not be the entirety of the story. There may be new details that emerge, like, for instance, that one of the officers, while working in a physical confrontation, may have had a concussion, may have been injured, and certainly there would be medical proof that demonstrates that through records that are going to be shared during what is hopefully a complete trial at some point in the near future. But that is the latest, as I'm seeing here, that one of the two officers involved, not the one who is on trial for murder, but the fellow officer who at one point was a state witness but now isn't. But anyway, you know what I really want to talk about, though, as I continue to try to provide those details to you, is a different article I found. And this article is not from this year. It's actually from 2018. But what I thought was interesting about it, and it comes to us from sciencefocus.com, a science-based website, is it did a deep dive into the difference between violent and nonviolent protesting and which one is more effective. And yeah, I know, I'm getting into the weeds just a tad to use some in the industry jargon. But look, let's be honest. I think a lot of times if you have a conversation with someone who is on a certain side, that might not be the same side as you or me, that side is going to tell you that the difference is that violence was needed because nonviolence wasn't working. So any sort of other things that go on now in our society, if they're all under the vein of trying to make society better, even if it's violent things, those things are okay, and we should ignore them or shouldn't react to them the way that so many of us probably would want to. If a business is burned down, usually people agree that's a bad thing. In 2020, it's harder to come to a consensus for some reason. But in the deep dive that I did for you, trying to better understand which type of protest, which type of social change is more beneficial, I found one number really surprising in this article, and it was the percentage of success that any sort of push for social change had, depending on whether or not the people were armed and whether or not the people were being violent. That is correct. Whether or not people were violent actually caused a huge difference in how successful a campaign would be. And I think more than anything else, as I saw in the story, it's because it's easier to get more people involved if you're peaceful. And that might be a simplistic sentence, and one that maybe a lot of people, like, your ear kind of turns to the side, like, wait a minute, what now? To be successful in a protest, what you need most, a whole bunch of people. You need a lot of support. You need active participants in order to succeed, in order to create change. If 3.5% of a society, apparently, or more, are active in some kind of civil protest, it is going to be noticed no matter what, if it's violent or if it's peaceful. And if it's peaceful, it's about 3 times as likely to succeed as if it's violent. 3 times as likely a peaceful protest to succeed. One reason why, more so than anything else, more so than the involvement of more individuals, is the length of time that type of protest can take place. If you do something peacefully, you have a lot more ability to do it for months at a time, and maybe to have individuals come and go into and out of, say, a daily protest. It's quite a bit different if you're going to try to be, physical about this and or armed, those kind of things, and much quicker, obviously. So if you have something that lasts a long time and involves a lot of people, and a lot of this information actually comes from the Program of Nonviolent Action at the U.S. Institute of Peace, which is an organization that would be involved in this, but about 3 times more likely to succeed in a civil resistance or some sort of civil movement if you are not violent about it. So when you hear someone tell you in an argument, you know what, peace never worked, no, the answer would just straight up be no to that. You could just simply look at them and be like, I'm sorry, you're wrong, and let me point you to some reading materials, and I'm sure they'll love that quite a bit. All right, let's move on to less serious things, because that's something I like to talk about every so often. The Nathan's hot dog eating contest is on. It's going to happen, but nobody gets to go. Look, I'll say this about stuff like this, the Nathan's hot dog eating contest, more so than about baseball, although a lot of baseball is played outside. If we can go to a restaurant and sit outside in a lot of places, or even inside in other places, why can't we figure this out? Why can't the people that want to see a bunch of dudes eat hot dogs stand really separate from each other and make that a thing? I don't know. But anyway, the eating contest will happen without fans over the 4th of July weekend, which is a hallmark of my day. Every single 4th of July, I turn on the ESPN and watch that because it's just good fun. And it's kind of an incredible activity. Also, the U.S. Open will happen in New York at the end of August. It will happen without any fans. And no conversations, too, in these sports about how much it's going to harm the sport. No negotiation between the hot dog eating contestants and the Nathan's brand as to how much money has to be exchanged in order to get the guys to show up. They just need hot dogs. I don't know if that can work in other ways, in other places. If you just feed people, do you eventually get people to do stuff? But in the hot dog world eating contest, that's all it takes. There's no other necessary requirements, no other negotiation needed. You put hot dogs without buns in this location, you got 20 guys willing to try to eat, and a few women willing to try to eat as many of them as they possibly can. All right, one other story that I found entertaining, mostly because in this last one, I don't know how you would ever explain this to a human on the off chance that this worked. But there is a person going viral. She calls herself the psychic artist. People are buying what they, I guess, hope are renderings of their future significant other. They pay about $30 to this woman. She paints a human that you don't know, she doesn't know. She just uses her psychic abilities. She is a natural-born psychic, according to her website. She sends it off to you, and that is a drawing of the person you will be with, the person you will marry, or at least the next relationship you will have. And people love it. I don't know if that's in the time of quarantine that something like this gets popular, but here's my reaction to that whole story. On the off chance that this were to work, that you paid for a painting, had painting shipped to your house, maybe prominently displayed it, but more likely put it away in a closet somewhere. On the off chance it worked and you met that person, the minute they find out that you have a painting of them from before you knew them, the relationship is over. The minute they find out, wait, what now? You had a painting of me. When did you have it done? And you knew me then? You didn't know me? And it was in your house for how long? I'm sorry, this is over. We should never, ever speak again. You'd have to immediately burn this. If you meet the person of your dreams, you have to immediately destroy pre-dating artist rendering of said human. Otherwise, there's no way this conversation happens well. That is my reaction. This is both the most amusing and most secretive thing you'd ever do in a potential relationship you have on the off chance it works. But people are buying these like crazy, so there must be some success. There's even comments from people who bought it saying that they were so curious, they bought one, and 3 months later, they met the man of their dreams. No word yet on whether or not they've shared said painting with the person, because I just can't imagine they have. My name is Craig Collins. I am filling in with you all day today. I'm actually back tomorrow, too. Chad Benson's coming back next week. Thrilled to be here. A lot more coming up in just a bit.
Set Chad straight. Text the show, 323-538-2423. That's 323-538-CHAD. Someone has to do it. Might as well be you. The Chad Benson Show.
Greg Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show with you today. Thrilled to be here. Let's get to this. I saw this story out of California about McDonald's. McDonald's employees in California are being told that they need to wear face coverings, but we're out of masks, which is not a good situation. So what are the alternatives? I am not kidding. These are the alternatives. Dog diapers and coffee filters. Those are being used as masks in a lawsuit. 4 employees of McDonald's restaurant in Oakland, California have filed that lawsuit against the franchise, blaming conditions of the business for the coronavirus outbreak that happened there. The employees they were reporting to work even when they became ill, and claimed that they were given makeshift items to cover their faces, including, as I said, the dog diapers, which I didn't know that was a thing. I'm not a dog owner. I love dogs. I say they're way better than cats constantly, because every interaction I have with the two animals, I prefer a dog. And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just saying. But I didn't know you had to diaper a dog sometimes, and I don't want to think about why. And then coffee filters, which obviously would probably be a less than efficient mask. This is a quote from that story from the attorney that's representing the plaintiffs. They were provided as a stopgap, but were completely inadequate, and it's somewhat offensive that the company wouldn't provide adequate masks. Eventually, they were given masks meant for one-time use, but they were told that to use them by the end of the day, and then eventually day after day. Okay, look, there is also a story, I think, from the AP about how businesses might start having you sign a waiver. You, the person who walks into a place, in order to go in there saying you're not going to sue them if you get sick. I know that the headline of this story sounds terrible. If makeshift items like a dog diaper or a coffee filter were forced on employees' faces, that's terrible. That's horrible, and there definitely should be a lawsuit about it. But at the same time, if there is an outbreak in a location, if people get sick somewhere, I think it's pretty hard with the way that coronavirus, the way that COVID-19 works, to really determine who gave it to who. I'm sure you've heard that asymptomatic cases are a lot higher than anyone predicted early on in this thing. So even if like 10 people got sick at the same restaurant, how it came into that place and how it spread within that place is still somewhat questionable. And I know I'm erring on the side of probably it makes a lot of sense if it all got transmitted at the McDonald's, but you never truly know how these outbreaks completely happen right now. We still don't have all the science on it. And more importantly, if these businesses are going to be held liable for something like this, when it is almost impossible to stop spread. There were a bunch of cases throughout our country where people stayed at home and still got sick. They would report, I think in New York a lot of times, that, these people who are now in one of our latest groups of individuals that are sick, some of them seriously so, they were staying at home and not going anywhere, and somehow they still got COVID-19. So it's a very aggressive, at least in the contagiousness of this virus, transmittable thing. And it's also something that a lot of us have without knowing it. I'm not trying to scare anyone, just being honest. and the way in which we try to navigate this, but companies are going to be worried about the liability here, and I don't think it was right to put a dog diaper on a human, so that might be where the mistake was truly made. But in any effect, I wonder how many people would sign a waiver to walk into a place. If you're in a place that's not completely open and it's all across the board, some places are, some aren't, and you do want to go to things, you want to be in a restaurant, you want to go to a hotel, whatever it is that you can't do that you want to do, would you be willing to say, look, if I get sick, it's on me. It was my decision to go. That's honestly a huge conversation right now for the Trump rally that's happening. And it was actually interesting yesterday to listen to the press secretary for the White House talk about the difference in coverage of protests on a national scale and how every single time that peaceful protesting was being covered by any of the major TV networks, not a mention or maybe a very late mention of the fact that maybe some people might get sick because they're not really socially distancing. The protesting was far more important to discuss and the idea of it than any of the decisions that those individuals were making to risk their health for something that they cared about. People want to go to a Trump rally if you care about the president. If you're a guy who likes him, you want to make a decision to go support him and go listen to him and hear from him. And yet the way that that's covered in the news is that it's entirely inappropriate for the president to be willing to hold a rally. And the way in which his press secretary has now responded to it is freedom of choice, man. I don't mean to quote a obscure a song, but freedom of choice is definitely a thing. You should have the option at this stage where we are so confused about how we best protect ourselves from something that seems like you can get in a lot of different ways. And if you want to be at a rally, if you want to support the president of the United States, to a lot of people, that's a cause worth going to. That's something as valid as any other maybe gathering of people, if that's what you're passionate about, if that's what you feel is important, and that's the guy, that's your guy. I don't know why so many people are upset that it's being held. If nobody goes, that can be a story. By the way, that's not going to be a problem. According to ticket sales, I think a whole lot of people are going to attend the Trump rally, but it's just so interesting to see that difference, to see that comparison from the way in which the conversation goes if we're talking about a peaceful protest about social change, which is obviously an important issue, and then, a Trump rally for the president of the United States, who some people used to think was an important human, and now a whole lot of people seem to think that title means absolutely nothing. One last story that I found tremendously amusing, and I only got a little bit of time to share it with you. A YouTuber spent 24 hours trying the Mike Tyson diet and the workout regime of one former heavyweight champion, Mike Tyson. Apparently, it's intense, and that's not at all surprising. No one should be shocked, but it involves about 4 miles of jogging in the morning. That's the first thing you do. Then you eat 3,000 to 4,000 calories throughout your day, including 6 bananas that you just consume back to back. And there's a certain level of, it's almost a hot dog eating contest, which I was talking about a second ago. To just eat 6 bananas back to back, I would no longer have joy in food. If I ever got to a point, and I'm not a huge ripped dude like a Mike Tyson used to be, and I probably still is, probably can still take me, but I think I would lose all joy in eating any and all food products if you had to do it like that just to make sure you get to the calories. Not only did he have to eat the 4,000 calories, he then did the workout. It included 10 rounds of sparring training, which I don't know who he sparred with or how good he is at it, but apparently he seemed to enjoy that part. High rep, low weight workouts, 2,000 squats, 500 tricep extensions, 500 push-ups, 500 shrugs with 65 pounds, and 500 neck crunches in any order you felt like making it. The guy, as far as I know, still in bed, still dealing with the soreness of a ridiculous week of working out. All right, Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show today. Thrilled to be with you. Actually back again tomorrow, too, so thrilled to be with you for a couple days. Chad is back next week. I'm going to start with what was breaking news at one point today. and I actually have some coverage when it broke from ABC. But a Supreme Court decision was made today about the DACA kids, essentially the DACA individuals, 800,000 young people who live in this country. And yet again, the Supreme Court went away other than the president. And as I play this audio for you and you hear some coverage of this decision, the overwhelming sense I have, whether or not you agree that this is right or wrong, and obviously President Trump is going to be upset by this decision, but the overwhelming thing that I noticed is, man, were people wrong when they thought that it would be terrible for the president of the United States to be so influential onto who was on the Supreme Court, because you were told that it meant every decision was going to be trash by people who obviously thought that the decisions were going to be ones they disagree with, by the talking heads and so many of those TV stations that get annoying at times. They said that it was terrible that Obama couldn't have picked the person that he wanted to put on the Supreme Court toward the end of his, that was just terrible, the way in which Republicans handled that. And then, of course, now that Trump has been so influential by putting multiple members on the Supreme Court, well, we were all doomed to have every single decision by the Supreme Court be so utterly one-sided. And yet, two big decisions in the last few days have both gone the opposite way of the President Trump administration. And here is some of that coverage from when this story broke earlier today.
There's a major decision out of the United States Supreme Court concerning the Dreamers, those hundreds of thousands of Americans who were brought here as children without the authority of law, illegally. Before the Supreme Court, the question was, did President Trump have the lawful authority to end President Obama's program, the DACA program, to protect the Dreamers from deportation? Today, in a stunning case, Chief Justice John Roberts, writing with the liberals, found that President Trump's decision to end the DACA program, that's Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, protecting the Dreamers, that President Trump and his administration acted unlawfully when they ended the DACA program.
Look, and my only reaction to this story, other than to talk about John Roberts more than I need to, but my only reaction to this story is, yet again, the narrative we're told when someone's capable of making a decision that people don't like is that we're all doomed in ways, and we end up not being doomed, at least if this is a decision you agree with. If the DACA program is one you wanted to see succeed in court, and, if you wanted to see the president defeated, obviously his ability to influence putting members on the Supreme Court didn't help him as much as maybe he even thought it would. So yet again, my big takeaway from that story is not whether or not you think it's right or wrong for 800,000 young people to get to stay in this country that came to this country illegally. More is just my shock in the way in which it's even going to be talked about for the next few days. Certainly, I can think of one news organization that will have it be breaking news every second of the day today and talk about it ad nauseum. But the truth is that, yet again, the projections we make and the assumptions we make based on how we feel about a dude, how we feel about, I shouldn't even say a dude, because in this case, it's the president of the United States, is just utterly different because of the way we cover him than maybe we need to. Even those that disagree with him will wind up being shocked by outcomes that happen because, the world isn't owned by any one individual. And I'll tell you this, too. The guy that you hate so much, he's not the evil person you think he is. It's my opinion. Don't mean to have so many hot takes on the show today, but that's just, All right, let's move on. NBC is going to bring back 30 Rock, a very popular TV show. They're going to produce a one-off episode. It's a very special episode. And no, it has nothing to do with any of the current stuff going on, which I really thought it would, actually. I thought it would be very much social commentary on what's happening. But that is NBC claiming not what it's about. The special will be filmed remotely, and it'll air on the 13th or the 16th of July. It'll include all the former cast members, including Tina Fey, Alec Baldwin, Tracy Morgan, everybody that's a part of that show. The episode will coincide with an upfront event where NBC hypes the schedule for next year. I don't know if TV is just getting real desperate. Actually, you know what's interesting? I've been watching, I don't know if you have, and I don't know who does. My wife does, so I do. I've been watching a bunch of America's Got Talent, which has been airing, and I'm just really curious how that show looks if they can't come back to places and they can't do performances live in big venues, because there's a lot of acts in a talent show that won't hit the same if it's people recording it on cameras. It'll feel more like you're watching a bunch of different YouTube videos of interest. There's people that swallow swords on that show. I don't know if that hits the same if you're doing it at home alone into a video and then having Simon Cowell judge remotely. So I am interested to see how that show looks. And maybe this is why all this TV hype is so necessary for so many places, because making live new content is challenging. I actually saw, I think it's the next Jurassic Park movie is going to be filmed entirely on a movie set. The new way in which they're going to finish, they were a few months into production of that new movie when they had to call it off because of all the quarantine things. So now they're locking everyone onto a movie set to finish it. And I don't know about you, but when I think of things like Jurassic Park movie, I think of big spaces, open areas, islands. And so if this all is going to be created via the computer, I know we've advanced, but I wonder if maybe you'll be able to tell a little bit, or maybe it'll just all be shot in somebody's room. Maybe this is the first time you get the one-room shot movie of a Jurassic Park where maybe the T-Rex is just waiting outside the window the whole time. I don't know how it'll work, but that might be the way we get those kind of things moving forward. And certainly, I guess, at least in the case, again, of NBC, bringing it back to them, they're hoping that this one-off TV episode that's shot remotely of a classic show that's no longer on the air reinvigorates your interest in what's coming up on that TV station. I saw this story in the news a few times over the last few days, and I just don't get a part of it. And it's again, not a serious thing. I am more drawn to the silly, the weird, and why they make the news every single day. That's the stuff I follow. If you ever got to like look at my Reddit stuff, I think you might be scarred for life. But this is the things I find interest in. Case in point, 150,000, I think it's euros worth of gold, about 170 grand, was found on a train. And gold. It was actual gold. This wasn't money. This wasn't cash. Someone in Switzerland on a train located a crap ton of gold. And there is no idea still as to who owns said gold. I don't know if there was a photo of like a prospector walking off the train someday, but it might be his. I don't know. I don't know how this works out. But they even had to now address this publicly and say they still are looking for the owner of the gold. And they've even mentioned in their news report on the fact that this was all found, there's not a lot of ways to describe it. There's not a lot of discerning marks or characteristics of the ridiculous amount of monetary things that no one pays for anything in gold. When's the last time you saw any? Why is so much of this on the train to begin with? And yet there's no real way to identify it. And that's been publicized. And the amount of money that it is roughly has been put out there. I can't believe everyone in the world isn't claiming this. It's almost like the most ridiculous jelly bean count the ones inside the bottle contest ever. Just guess a number. Throw it around 170,000 and then claim that you were in Switzerland and didn't, I don't know, file the proper paperwork somehow. And you got a shot at being a little bit wealthier, a lot wealthier. I can't believe they'd put all this information out there, though, and say they're failing to find the owner. And the threat is that if no owner can be found for a whole bunch of gold in the next 5 years, well, the people just get to keep it. The government just gets to keep it there. But why? Why travel with that much of a thing? You're not going to, is it just to like show off, or was this purposefully left there? I need so many more details than have been provided to me so far. And I'm abundantly curious as to what's happening. All right, I want to move on to one other story. Again, that I found interesting. I found this on Fox News. Michigan restaurants are going to use ghosts to fill empty seats to promote social distancing. I think because they want to petrify people. I know at other times I've talked on the show about the noodles that people would wear, these like pool noodle hats, which are just ridiculous things, but kind of funny things that restaurants would put on your head so that you make sure to stay those 6 feet apart from others. Now, apparently, we're going the road of filling seats with ghosts. They also were doing like wax figurines at one point so you could sit with celebrities. But this, to me, this makes no sense. And actually, I talked to a friend of mine who also does radio for a living, and he said the one thing he would not want to connect with eating and food is death. And that is, I think, a really good take. If you saw a bunch of ghosts there, or even just a bunch of like ill people, I don't think that makes you really want to be inside a restaurant. And that is kind of sort of what the people at Royal Oaks, Michigan are doing for their Italian restaurant. And it is a fancy Italian shop too, by the way. And the owner, whose name is Luigi, which I think is utterly appropriate and important. And I'm an Italian, but I think Luigi's a great guy, Cortano. He said that his wife came up with the idea, and he said this to the Fox affiliate there in Detroit, and he was thrilled about it. I wonder if that's totally true. Because in all honesty, they're just removing some tablecloths, putting them over some chairs, and putting eyes on it. It's a Halloween costume at best version of a ghost that's sitting next to you while you have your meal. But if the wife came up with it, Luigi's not going to say it's a bad idea. That's just what I'm saying. I'm putting it out there. Even his son, Luca, who, by the way to name a kid Luca, that's a good move, also said that he thought it was cool. He thought it was amusing. But I wonder if all the customers are going to love it as much. When you remove a table, it's like someone comes into your house and there are 2 chairs instead of the whole living room, they said, to an outlet. So they didn't feel like that was appropriate, moving all these tables around because it didn't feel like a restaurant to them anymore. So wife says, put ghosts in spots, and husband probably very reluctantly is like, yeah, good idea. That sounds, we should do that. But I mean, they got coverage. They got news coverage. I'm talking about it here. So maybe that is a job well done. All right. This is Greg Collins. I'm filling in for Chad Benson today. I will be back in just a bit talking about a few of the other less important news stories of the day because I just can't take all the serious news all the time. I did see that Airbnb has put out an enhanced cleaning protocol handbook. So if you're looking to get a Airbnb soon, you have to kind of hope, I guess, that 1, this protocol is good, and 2, that the people who own a house that they're letting you rent out for a few days followed it. I don't know if that's a good hope, but I'll tell you all the things in that protocol and a lot more after this. Greg Collins filling in.
Check out our Chad Benson Show Facebook page where you can hang out or hang your grievances out to dry. This is Chad Benson.
Greg Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. Chad is back next week. I'm thrilled to be here. Keep saying that because I am. I'm really grateful that you would tune in and that they would put me on this very platform. So thank you very much. Chad, though, much, much better at this than me, and he'll be back in a few days. I am not here long term. Don't worry. Anyway, Airbnb, I mentioned them a second ago, and I'll get into their enhanced cleaning protocol handbook that they've recently put out because we know that a whole bunch of homeowners who put out their places for Airbnb are going to strictly follow the enhanced cleaning protocol handbook. I am being very sarcastic if you can't tell. Before I get to that, though, let's talk about Elizabeth Warren. Just a tad, just for a second. I saw a hot take on CNBC.com about how Elizabeth Warren is a great pick for VP for Joe Biden because she's going to raise a whole bunch of money. She's really good at raising money, and that's a valuable thing. I do wonder, and I was even asking my producer this a second ago, is there any other world other than politics where you can have opinions forcefully one day? You can have them via debate. You can scream at people and tell them how horrible and terrible they are and all the things they did were bad or all the ways they treated people were terrible. And then just a few months later, be their best buddy and have totally different opinions about some extreme things. Elizabeth Warren was Bernie Sanders in a lot of ways. And Bernie Sanders obviously is the crazy, as far as you get to that side of the aisle kind of candidate. Elizabeth was teetering on that line for sure. But the rumor is if she's picked as the vice president, totally willing to be way different and a lot more in the middle of the road like Biden kind of is, I guess. I don't know if you really truly think that. But more importantly than anything else, I think Elizabeth Warren does have a skill that Biden doesn't. She can talk coherently into a microphone and coherently when interviewed by people. That is something that Joe does not always hit out of the ballpark. So maybe we'll see a lot more of that. And maybe this whole rumor, which is definitely a rumor out there, that whoever the VP is, they're really secretly the presidential candidate because Joe's going to find a way to not be at some point, which I know that's just a rumor and I'm not saying it's true. Elizabeth, we don't know. I know that my producer and I were just joking that if Hillary Clinton winds up being the VP, Joe's getting sick at some point. Something's going down in the near future after that, but I can't see that happening. More Hillary Clinton makes no sense to me, but then at times a lot of the things that happen politically make little sense to me. I get confused all the time. All right, let's move on to that Airbnb story. Enhanced Cleaning Protocol Handbook, 38 pages. If you know anybody that does anything on Airbnb where they actually rent out a place, the last thing they want to do is acquire a 38-page handbook and how to do that. If you have a place that you rent out, even if you do it fancy, even if you bought a location, you make it all nice, you have it in some tourist area so that people go and you keep it clean, you're still not a hotel. You don't want to operate like a hotel. You're a homeowner who's renting out a spot for people to stay in for a few days. And I'm not saying it's not important. Look, I know that the illness is still real. COVID-19 is still out there in the world, and people definitely should be fearful of getting it to an extent. I mean, a lot of people who get it wind up being okay, but it's still, I don't necessarily want it. You don't want it. And if you stay at an Airbnb, you'd like to think it's clean. But to think that every person putting up one of these listings is going to do these 38 pages and that there's no way they can check. There's nobody getting sent out to your location. Like, did you follow everything? Did you do all the steps? It's just not, I would say, yeah, I did that. I still want to rent out my my 2-person, backyard house that I have, my add-on, so that I get a little bit of cash this holiday season. And I doubt that they're getting a whole bunch of people doing listings. But this press release said, don't worry, if you get an Airbnb, you're protected, because the homeowner for sure is going to do a whole bunch of stuff that is required now via a 38-page long handbook. Let me do this. Let me put this bet out there. And anybody who wins this bet, I don't know how we would prove you win. I will somehow make it right. I think it would have to be an embarrassment bet. I don't think I'm legally allowed to give you things of monetary value in situations like this. But I'm betting all the listeners, I want someone to prove to me that one homeowner read all 38 pages. Not that they even follow them, but they read the entirety of the handbook cover to cover. I think I'm going to lose this bet, actually, because at least one will. Maybe a handful. Maybe we go to 5, and then I feel better about it, because it's just not happening. It's just not a thing. If you go to a place, if you want to go to a hotel or you want to go to an Airbnb while things are going on, while people have all different levels of fear as to what is and isn't, safe, I think you got to take those matters into your own hands. I think you clean to the extent you want things cleaned when you get into whatever spot you're in, and or just decide that maybe you're not as fearful as others. All right. Also, this story amuses me, and maybe I don't have time for all of it now, but I saw that a glass bridge in Tennessee was recently cracked because a pedestrian decided to do a baseball slide across it. And I don't know if you know about these attractions. There's one actually in Chicago where you can look down from one of the tallest buildings there, and it's just a glass box, and you see the world under you. I don't think I'd ever be as confident as this human being must have been to do things like a baseball slide on a glass bridge. And I don't know if this was for like a social media post or what it would be. There's going to be very expensive necessary things to fix this. They're going to go through repairs for a bit, and to not comply with posted rules of not running, jumping, or bouncing on the bridge is dangerous, according to the press release from the people who run that location. Someone was so confident that they were willing to do a baseball-like slide across a completely glass bridge. That, to me, is bonkers. It's 680 feet. It's called the Sky Bridge there in Tennessee. And it's broken now because somebody's a moron and really wanted more social media followers. And I think I feel most confident of any time ever on the show of calling that human being a moron. I think that's totally okay. I don't think I'll have any pushback on that, because that person definitely makes no sense to me. I don't know if they were dared to do it too. It happened at night on a Monday, and it forced the attraction completely closed. Real good move. After this, I have a lot more coming up on the show. Craig Collins filling in for Chad Benson. I want to tell you the percentage of people who've given someone else a middle finger while driving. It's higher than you think.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. I am Craig Collins filling in today. I'm actually back with you tomorrow as well. Chad is back next week. Much deserved couple days off for the host of this very program, Chad Benson. I want to start with what I saw from this morning. It was Judge Knapp appearing on Fox and Friends talking about the charges in the death of Rayshard Brooks. It's an interesting take from Judge Knapp, and one that I wonder if maybe a lot of people might agree with. Here is what he said this morning about those charges, the murder charges from the announcement just the other day. If I can get this audio to work, hold on just a second. Craig Collins Show every so often has technical issues. Oh, come on, Judge Knapp. Why are you doing this to me right now, bud? Okay, hold on. We're going to get that in a second because that's my fault, totally on my end, not having that play right. But Judge Knapp did say something to the effect of he thinks that it's a gross overstatement, a gross inflated amount of charges, and he is obviously a critic of them based on his reaction to it that you're going to hear in just a second, which to me, and maybe to a lot of people, makes a lot of sense. And as he will also say, if it winds up being a charge that winds up getting overturned, if he winds up being found innocent, I wonder if the reaction to that may be more powerful than just the fact that the charges were put out at all. It might cause more civil unrest. If you went one way to make the charges sound in line with what you were worried a lot of people would be calling for, and then they wind up being charges that are so grossly inflated, someone winds up completely innocent of them. I don't know where we land there, but here is Judge
I think
Knapp.
It's a catastrophic mistake to charge him with felony murder. Look, if there's a jury trial, here's what the judge is going to say to the jurors before they start deliberating. If that police officer reasonably believed that Mr. Brooks was using or was about to use deadly force on him, the police officer, then the police officer is permitted to use deadly force to protect himself. Secondly, the determination of what was in the police officer's mind is not what a reasonable civilian would do, but what a reasonable police officer would do. These charges are grossly inflated, Ainsley. You know what's going to happen? He's going to be found not guilty, and that's going to produce a tremendous uproar amongst the people of Atlanta. They should have charged some far more reasonable charge rather than one that exposes him to the death penalty. It's just not going to work.
That makes sense to me, and I don't know if there's reasons why or if you agree or disagree with Judge Knapp. He at times has said things that I don't always completely fall on the same side as him on, but obviously he's a guy who knows law quite a bit better than a lot of us do. And saying it that way, if you go a certain road, now granted, in the case of George Floyd, the death of George Floyd, at first the charges were lesser than what certainly a lot of people thought they should have been, so then the charges get changed there. And now, in this case, out of Atlanta, you see the charges starting out at such an extreme that so many police officers walked out yesterday from work. I don't know if you saw that story or followed the coverage of it. There were reports yesterday that a bunch of Atlanta police officers chose either to not show up for work, they turned in their keys, they might have just sat in their cruisers and not actually worked. And the reason why, for a lot of them, would be that they don't feel that they are protected and supported by the organizations that are asking them to protect and serve a community. I also saw a report about the amount of places where some police officers right now are working tremendous overtime hours in order to respond to things, maybe like some officers not being there, maybe protesting on their own, and they're not getting paid for it right now. And there's these calls to defund the police, which make no sense to me. Well, we're asking some officers to work 60, 70-hour weeks in certain areas. But this story, just to finish it, officers yesterday evening decided not to work in Atlanta in response to what a lot of people there, certainly in the law enforcement world, feel is completely unfair treatment of one of their own. Those reports were refuted via social media by the Atlanta Police Department, saying earlier suggestions, this was last night, that multiple officers from each zone had walked off their job were inaccurate. The department is experiencing a higher than usual number of callouts with incoming shift. We have enough resources to maintain operations and remain able to respond to incidents. That's their Twitter feed. But there also are reports from people that were following the police scanners in the area that this was being stated a few different times by dispatchers. We are not answering 911 calls right now due to personnel issues. Consider that world just for a second, because, you know, it's interesting, and I'm not sure that I agree always with the means in some of the videos I've seen, but there are videos where you see people chanting things to the effect of defund the police, and then maybe someone trying to prove a point escalates the situation, and those same people chanting that pull their phones out and try to call 911 to get someone to come out and respond to a situation that they all of a sudden feel is dangerous. If you dial that number and no one responds, and that is truly the idea for some as far as defund the police goes, or you dial that number and maybe your neighbor answers the phone and you hope for help there, that is a scary world to consider. No matter what is wrong and right about the moves so many of us are making, or the protest that people are trying to draw attention to, what is certainly a scary world is that you dial the phone number that so many of us know as the last resort in any situation, the thing you need to do to call and get help, and no one answers. No one is dispatchable. And last night in Atlanta, they may have experienced that, where people dialed 911 and nobody answered the phone. According to the police scanner, we are not answering 911 calls due to personnel issues. Not completely confirmed information, but information that exists. All right, I'm going to move on to this story, although I kind of feel like I don't want to talk about it, just because the guy might be a media guy and maybe there's an attention element to this thing. I don't know. But you've probably heard an American Airlines passenger got kicked off a flight for refusing to wear a mask. There's multiple videos of this, so this definitely happened. The guy wouldn't put a mask on. he makes a point in the video he put up on Periscope, a social media platform, a video platform that no one even asked him if he had a medical condition that prevented him from wearing one, which is a thing. Some people don't wear masks because they can't. No one asked him that. They just kicked him off of a flight and went back and forth with him. I don't even think you're really allowed medically or legally to ask like what the ailment might be. You might be able to ask if you have one, but that might be as far as you can go. The name is Brandon Straka, and he is a founder of Walkaway Campaign. He is obviously in the news because of this, and this is some of the information that he shared himself via video on social media platforms about that incident. I don't know how much of this I'll play.
So I'm at the airport now. I just got kicked off of my flight, American Airlines, because they told me that it was the law that I have to wear a mask. By the way, I filmed the entire thing, so the entire thing is recorded.
Not surprised you filmed the whole thing. Okay, go ahead.
And when I pointed out that this is not true, this is actually not the law, they said, yes, it is. And then eventually they changed their story to, well, it's our policy and you can't fly with us if you don't do it. I said, no one's even asked me if I have a condition that prevents me from wearing a mask. Nobody on the plane. Somebody asked me outside of the plane.
Nobody on the plane asked him if he has that condition. A big brouhaha happens. A bunch of passengers getting upset because their plane is not taking off. This guy not wearing a mask, refusing to wear one, kicked off the flight. And then I guess he gets one rescheduled, and this is all over the news today. I do have a couple reactions to this. The first one, and I don't know if it's the right reaction, and probably not a reaction all of us want to hear or even you totally agree with, but I kind of wish that for his own sake in this situation that he might have just decided to put a mask on to get to his destination. Now, granted, I don't know that that's the right situation, but I've said it this way before. If you don't believe in the efficacy of a mask, that's fine. I don't think that we all need to be medical professionals to know that it might be less effective than some feel it is in protecting all of us, just throwing that around your face. At the same time, though, if it makes people comfortable in the world, and I'm not sure that it's always better, to have that, I give credit to anyone who's willing to walk into a situation, make it uncomfortable because of something they believe in, and yet if I'm a guy trying to get on a plane, I think I go a different way. This is definitely a big story, though. American Airlines certainly has policies that enforce the wearing of face coverings. A lot of airlines have those policies. He said he flies often, and not all the places he goes force him, obviously, to throw things on, so he doesn't wear a mask himself. Obviously, there's mitigating circumstances to all of this, but look, I don't want to get on a soapbox and preach to you. I don't want to take away your right to choose to do whatever it is you want to do. But I just wonder if this is not the right fight to have. If at times like this is the one fight that you let go. But then I guess I've heard a lot of people say you start letting go of fights and you got a whole bunch of things happening. Case in point might be the amount of businesses that will be changing the name of their product in light of the fact that maybe some of them might be problematic. And I think there are varying degrees to how accurate that is. But there's a bunch of companies, as I talked about earlier on this list, Mrs. Butterworth being one of the bigger names, Aunt Jemima, of course, being the first name to start this off, but company after company, Cream of Wheat being the most recent one to consider changing its imagery on its logo to better understand the current situations in which we live. And I'll say this about that story, too, because, look, on the story of the mask, my reaction is you put a mask on, you get to your destination. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's a truth right now. In the same vein, whether or not every single company that will be praised for being extra woke right now is actually woke is irrelevant to me. I think what is true, and what probably will be true, is that if they kept the imaging the way it was for a lot of these products, they felt that their sales weren't going to be as good as if they changed it. That's my opinion. I don't see anyone saying that. I see everyone saying that it's, being socially responsible, responding to the developing situation in our world, in our society. And yet, to me, the end reaction to all that is probably the syrup is going to sell better after you change the logo and switch it to a different product. If it tastes the same and you like the taste of it, you're probably going to buy it. All right, one more story about problematic things, just because my producer sent this to me. Thank you, Phil, for getting on that and getting me a couple of these interesting stories. There's a bunch of movies that are being debated as to whether or not they need to have disclaimers and discussions about the out of touchness of said movie. And some of the movies on the list surprised me a bit, although honestly, since this happened to Gone with the Wind earlier on, It could happen to anybody. It happened to Dumbo. The Dumbo movie on Disney wound up having a bunch of explanations to it, and some of these might be valid. There's movies that you watch now that were made years ago that you might cringe. There's even people who did things in movies that would say they feel differently about it now. And yet, if you put a disclaimer at the front of Forrest Gump, I wonder if maybe, like a lot of people feel, the Twitter mob has gotten one too many of their demands, and this wasn't necessary. I could understand that if there's a dated reference at all, it's because of the time in which something was created. But here's a list of the movies that might include warning labels in the near future. Dirty Harry, shot in 1971. As I said, Forrest Gump. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom from 1984. Me Before You from 2016 is a movie that might wind up having a warning on it. Emilia Clarke is on that. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which was just recently created, might wind up with a warning label of its own. That is a well-renowned movie from Quentin Tarantino starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt. I thought it was a really good movie. The Children's Hour, The Searchers, The Silence of the Lambs from 1991, Holiday Inn from 1942, which you haven't seen that. If you haven't seen it, it's a Bing Crosby, Fred Astaire joint that takes place in a hotel, and they might have some issues in that movie, and they want to address those via disclaimer. True Lies, which is a movie I didn't think I'd see on many lists for any reason. It's a James Cameron picture. True Lies, I think, stars Arnold Schwarzenegger, if I'm remembering the right film. And apparently that's going to need some disclaimers because some of the characters in it are religious fanatics and terrorists, and that might offend certain communities too. Does the disclaimer even really have value? I don't understand. Putting that at the front of the movie and saying, look, this movie was made at this time, and this might be insensitive to you. I just want you to know that the movie still is a thing. Or do you actually full on edit it? Do we go to the route of changing all these things? So all of a sudden, a movie made in 1942 with Fred Astaire and Bing Crosby is about half the picture. And actually, you know what? I'm going to full on steal another one of Phil's jokes that he made for me, my producer today. If they tried to put Blazing Saddles on TV, that would be the length of a commercial, essentially, that movie. And you'd need so many disclaimers in order to try to get that thing aired. Is that the world we all want to live in? I don't know. Does that appease the people who are mad? I have no idea. You might not even make it. I miss the trailers often for movies, so you might not even see said disclaimer. It's confusing to think that so many of these movies are going to be retroactively at least warning labeled, a la the same thing we put on like cigarettes. I don't know. It's a confusing time in which we live. Quick break, a lot more on the Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in. I want to talk about Steve Jobs' right-hand woman, someone by the name of Joanna Hoffman, and what she said about Facebook. She likened it to a drug dealer. That's next.
Being antisocial sucks. Hang with Chad's friends on Facebook, The Chad Benson Show. And if you just need some alone time, head on over to Twitter at Chad Benson Show. Either way, we can't wait to meet the real you.
It's The Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins. I am filling in with you today. I'm actually back tomorrow as well, and then again on Monday. But Chad will be back next week. He deserves these days off, but he will be back. No one needs to worry about that. 32% of drivers have given somebody else the middle finger. That is something that recently got studied. Again, I like to say when I find these sillier things that I think scientists got bored, but a new survey of people being asked to admit it. This might be very similar to a poll about whether or not you support the President of the United States and whether or not you're voting for him. Because you see all those poll numbers out there all the time, and they say that Joe Biden's winning by at least 10 points in some, I think maybe double digits in a lot. But we saw that before. That's how it worked out years ago, and I don't know what the future holds until people actually cast their ballot. Maybe in the same way, the fact that it's only 32% of drivers that admit to this is because you had to do it. 34% of people say they at least honk when someone is doing something silly, going too slow, making a mistake. 18% full-on tailgate, which is always the most annoying to me. If I make a mistake and you want to bumper-to-bumper me, I don't know that that's going to go well for any of us. 12% have cut in front of a bunch of people while waiting in line to merge. And I have a thing about that, but I'll save it for a second. 7% have stolen a parking spot from someone they saw was waiting for it. 7% of drivers on the shoulder go through or around traffic. 7% have dinged someone's car and just driven away. That's mean. 4% have full-on keyed a car. I don't think I'd ever need to do that. But let's get into some of these. Let's get into the trust tree for a second. It's just you and I. We got a break coming up, so it's going to be fast. But how many of us have actually gotten so mad at someone on the road that what we chose to do is, put our hand up and then put most of the fingers down and just keep one of those guys up in the air? I think it's higher than 32%. I think that's a thing that happens. I don't know why it feels good if you're someone that does it, because the other person, depending on their reaction, if they even look over, I don't think they're going to care for very long. They might get mad, but it's a very short situation, short transaction between you and them. And the end result, you just feel powerful, but you did almost nothing. The tailgating one, though, that one bothers me. And then merging in a line, I will say this, and I've died on this hill before on radio shows. I'm willing to do it. Look up the zipper merge method. It's a thing. We're supposed to do it. So if you and I are getting to that end of the line and I got in front of you, I was following a rule, guy. All right, Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins. I am filling in with you today. I'm actually back tomorrow. I think I'm even back on Monday, but Chad will be back next week. He's getting a much-deserved few days off. I want to start off this conversation talking about Facebook, and more specifically, a woman by the name of Joanna Hoffman, who has been called Steve Jobs' former right-hand woman because of the rant that she provided anti-Facebook. I am not a fan of social media, even though I'm on all the platforms. You can actually find me, facebook.com/Craig Collins Show. If you want to follow me there, that was terrible timing the way I did that. I'm sure you can also follow the Chad Benson Show on Facebook, Twitter, and all the places you can find him. But here's what Hoffman said about the Facebook social media platform, most specifically, that it is, quote, destroying the very fabric of democracy, destroying the very fabric of human relationships, and peddling in an addictive drug called anger. That is a hot take, but I don't know if a lot of us think it's completely wrong. She said, it's just like tobacco. It's no different than opioids. We know anger is addictive. We know we can attract people to a platform and get them engaged if we can get them teed off. So therefore what? We should capitalize on that each and every time. I don't know if it's just anger that the social media platforms do so well in, and the reason we come back to them so much. What I think it actually is singular opinion. I think the way in which they're built is to feed you more of what you click on, what you touch. And so eventually you think everybody agrees with you. And then once you start operating your regular life outside of when you're in front of your computer typing into your Twitter machine or whatever it is that you're using, and I called it a Twitter machine on purpose. I'm aware that sounds dated. But if you do it that way and you think that's every human, and then you go out into the real world and somebody slaps you in the face with a different opinion, you can't handle it. Most people can't handle anymore not being agreed with. You have to be so ridiculously close to someone to have an argument with them in today's day and age, because there's just no way to do it and hear the other person if you don't care a whole bunch about them. And I think it's true for a lot of us. And I think the reason why is so much of our exchange experience now, our social conversing, happens on a platform or multiple platforms that are designed to get us to come back, designed, as she says, to get us maybe to be angry, but mostly to just be addicted to the platforms. And so they want to give you what you want. And if you start to think that that's how the whole world works, that's why I said earlier on in the show, and I'll say all the time, whenever anybody like me on the radio or maybe just in your regular life tries to have a difficult conversation where there's multiple opinions, you got to preface it with just listen to the words I say and don't make up a bunch of other ones that I'm not saying. If I tell you one sentence, hear just that sentence. And if I try to tell you a paragraph of things, please listen to all of them and stop focusing on what you think I'm saying and turning it into like a one-sentence thing. It's so weird. We can't have long conversations or short conversations because in both sides of that world, we wind up just getting totally lost in some other version of what the other person heard that's not necessarily what we said. I don't even know if any of that made sense, but that's my opinion on this whole thing, is that social media has made it so it's impossible for us to understand just how many opinions are different than our own, and they've done it somewhat purposefully because it benefited them, and so many of us forget that. I agree for sure that those things are like drugs in the fact that they are addictive. I don't know if it's just anger again that I respond to as the reason why they're so popular, but that is an interesting take, that platforms like Facebook are akin to drug dealers, and maybe we need to take a harder look at them and talk to the Mark Zuckerberg a little bit more about those platforms and just how valuable they are and maybe the way in which we navigate them in the future. 78% of new parents worry about their baby being exposed to germs. I don't know about you. Whenever I read a headline like that, the first thing I think about is my childhood and how very not afraid my parents seem to be of germs for me. And I get it that in today's world, in the COVID-19 outbreak world, that right now it probably makes more sense than ever to be weary of a dirty object, to be weary of something like going to a park and, you know, your kid playing on things that maybe aren't getting cleaned all that often. I get that. But 78% of people being worried that their baby is exposed to any and all germs, I've seen studies that might be making things like allergies more common because we're just not getting the experience that I got when I was allowed to eat a mud pizza, when I was allowed to sit down, play in sand or dirt, and then consume it and have my mom eventually look at me and be like, oh, honey, you need to stop. But there was no rush to the ER. I just ate a whole dirt pizza and everyone kind of thought that was normal. I mean, do you remember lawn jarts? Does anyone know what they are? If you don't know, Google it. And if you're of a certain age where you're going to be afraid of things, maybe not, because it's going to be horrifying. But lawn jarts were gigantic dart-like weapons that children could play with in the yard. And they were a lot of fun to play with. And at a time, no one afraid. I don't think that germs were a worry then. I think that much more serious, horrible things could have happened. And yet they didn't, because we need to find a way to grow up in a world in which we're exposed to enough things to have an immune system to fight them if and when we get ill later. But that is a survey of 2,000 parents with babies up to 6 months old. And again, I'm not totally saying that I don't understand the current situation we live, the uniqueness of our time, and that maybe that makes sense to a degree more than ever before. But also, Google lawn jarts. Elon Musk is in the news. He's in the news all the time. I love to talk about this individual solely because at times I cannot fathom how these are things. This is the headline, though. It comes to us from Page 6. Thank you for being a product I read you constantly, even though it's probably not valuable. Elon Musk had to deny an accusation made by Johnny Depp about Johnny Depp's former wife, Elon's girlfriend, Amber Heard, and another actress model by the name of Cara Delevingne. I always forget how to say her last name. I know she's famous. I see her in my brain. Can't always remember how to pronounce that. But apparently, Johnny Depp accused them in a lawsuit of maybe all getting together. All three, the two models and Elon. You know what I'm trying to say here and not say at the same time? He had to deny that. He had to publicly say the Tesla billionaire, the guy who put people in space recently and might at some point be creating a bionic man. I'm not kidding. I'll get to it in a second. He really is. He had to deny that him, Amber, and Cara had an interesting evening one time. What is going on in the world? And by the way, real quick, out of all the super rich, somewhat sketchy, odd people that exist in the world, who is the Lex Luthor of our time? Is it Elon or is it Bezos? I think it's Bezos. Bezos obviously looks more like Lex Luthor, the villain in Superman, but I think they're both competing. It's a back and forth for sure. And this bionic man, if it's created, I have no idea if he'll be kind or mean. I don't know if it's Terminator starting. It might be. But to complete that story, actually, Neuralink is a company that Elon, I think he unveiled it last year in 2019. The goal was to help patients that are dealing with serious things like being paralyzed and getting electrodes and different computer devices to help them be capable of moving again, to restore lost muscle function for people that didn't have it. So great start out. That's how every story like this happens. It was a good idea at first. But he says he's now, this is Elon speaking, about a year away from, quote, a $6 million man. referencing the TV show, obviously, of a fully bionic human. Look, I have two reactions when I read that. One, I want it. I would want to be one. I know it sounds terrible, and I'm not sure that I want to be the first guy. I would like to be like guy 10 to go bionic, but there's a lot of things that sound better about it. You might even be equipped with a Bluetooth device and a charger in said body at all times if necessary. But he's gonna essentially transplant computer chips into people's brains and turn them into sort of robots, and he says he's a year away from that. So I ask you once again, I guess that's how I should start and end the segment with the question, who is the evil villain of our time? Is it Bezos or is it Elon Musk? Bezos, by the way, I don't know if you saw this, and I've been talking about it ever since I saw it. He's building a clock in a mountain. That's a real story. Google it. Jeff Bezos is spending millions, maybe even more than that. I don't know if it's actually billions, but a ton of money to put a clock inside a mountain so that it's just there, so that it lasts a long time. I might have even talked about it before in the show when that story broke. But what is the point of that? I don't understand. Is that the beginning of his evil lair? I think it might be. I think that definitely Bezos is going to spend more time there in that layer behind the clock that opens up to expose him and all of the, horrible individuals that are the villains of our time. Certainly Zuckerberg's in there and Bezos too. They are the whatever the enemies of the Justice League were. I don't remember who they are. The Doom somebody? I'm referencing a lot of comic books right now. I'm probably losing a lot of you. I don't really care. I know that they're definitely a bunch of supervillains, though. One last story, actually, and then I'll take a break. I saw this and I was intrigued. It's a woman out of China, 45 years old. She flies 900 times a year, and she just knew her flight that she was going to take was going to be delayed. So she took out an insurance policy on it. She actually flew between 2015 and 2019. So this covered multiple flights, her insurance policy, which I didn't know you could buy insurance for a thing like that, but that proves how often I travel. She made $400,000 correctly predicting that her flights would be delayed. $400,000. Some sources described her scheme as gambling, and some outlets in China have said that, they conducted research before each flight to buy tickets and maybe even cheated the system. But in all honesty, if you could do it, if you could throw down some money, especially now when you have people getting thrown off planes for not wearing masks and it takes a while to get going, $400,000 would be a nice caveat to the fact that you missed the whatever meeting you were trying to make in the morning. $400,000. And that's in our money. It's like $3 million of her money that she made during that time because policy was broken a bunch and she had a bunch of delayed flights. The people today are making some moves that I really, really do admire. That would be one. And yeah, I am serious. I would like to be a first trial run Bionic Man, or maybe fifth trial. I want to be the fifth guy, get it a little bit right. Not as many software updates are needed. All right. A break time. This is Craig Collins filling in on The Chad Benson Show.
Boys, give me a bowl of chili with plenty of peppers.
One Mexican heartburn. Why don't you mugs grow up?
The Chad Benson Show, where independent, a la carte thinkers have a seat at the table and a voice in the dialogue.
I'll have what she's having.
This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins. I'm filling in with you today. I'm actually back tomorrow, so come on back for more if you enjoyed this. If not, Chad Benson definitely coming back to his program. He'll be back next week, so don't worry about that. I've talked about baseball a little bit during the show. I will mention now the NBA for a couple of reasons. The first one being that players just found out how much money they'll lose if they choose not to participate in the games that will happen at Disney World. The NBA is coming back to play. 22 teams have been invited to play games. Essentially all the teams that are still at least somewhat in the playoff hunt. If your team is mathematically eliminated, you're probably not going to get to play any more games, but the rest of them will play, and then there will be a postseason. If you don't actually participate, if you choose not to, you will lose about 8% of your salary, and players who miss all 14 games will lose up to 15% of their salary. Players on teams not good enough to be invited will begin to see their salary remain intact beyond restrictions already agreed to on their whole deal. So money will change, and yet somehow the players are capable of deciding to play, where in other sports, baseball, obviously, that's not so easy. But this is the more important story I saw recently from the NBA, and I wonder if a lot of us think that this is accurate, true, or not, because I think this is viable. Kyrie Irving was rumored to have said on a players-only call when talking about money and talking about all the things he doesn't like about the current situation, that the players should just go and start their own league, that no owners, no teams, no infrastructure. Let's just be a bunch of people who play these sports really well and who are, still rich, not, I think, billions of dollars, NBA owner rich for the most part, but certainly well off. And let's just start our own league. And look, if players of that level of talent were willing to do a really bare bones version of their sport while gaining popularity for it, yes, I'm talking XFL in a way, but even doing pickup games in certain areas, not having fully developed areas, not that they'd have to go to that extreme. I think they'd be capable of getting some arenas with the funds they have. I think this is actually a viable threat. I think this is something that owners would need to take seriously in any major sport. If all the marquee players, especially in basketball, where the star player is so much more important than some other sports, than all the players that are role guys, I think it could work. YouTube's a thing now. You don't even need a TV rights deal. You don't need any of that stuff going in. You just need a bunch of people willing to do it, willing to be part of this brand new league and just play the sport on your own. I don't know how many contracts would be broken, how many lawsuits would be created from it. So obviously, therein probably lies the rub, the legal challenges to it. But I think that more than ever before, this is something that talented people playing a sport could inevitably do, just build their own thing. I don't know if it makes the product better or worse to not have owners be a part of it. I would assume worse is the right answer there. But in the case of this story, if we apply that to baseball, we'd be getting baseball back. So I don't know who I'm rooting for or what I want in this situation. But when he leaked that, when that story came out, the biggest reaction I had to it is, you know what? I think that could actually work. And tell us if I'm wrong. Tell us on any of our social media platforms why I'm totally missing the point on this, because I'd love to understand what I'm getting wrong about it and correct my opinion. Because, again, I don't really think that it would make the sports better for them to be owned just by the athletes playing them. Much like, honestly, anything is completely owned by any one individual. I don't think that always goes super well. I think you need checks and balances in all kinds of situations to make products as good as possible. But these salary demands, these financial things, I mean, would it be so far as to just ask people to, donate money to watch a YouTube video of a bunch of star athletes playing basketball at somebody's house and see how much money they make off of that? Because even if you look at the music industry, when we went through the coronavirus, the quarantine, the pandemic, and a bunch of musicians just started going to different platforms and asking for funds and performing virtual concerts, they did way better than I think anyone expected them to do at that time. I don't know that it was a true replacement for the social experiences so many of us want in public, but it was something. So as I talk about that now and think about that as sort of the basis for a beginnings of a conversation, I do think that star athletes could eventually have their own league. Real quick, one last thing I need to mention. I'm almost out of time here for this, but this is Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. Thrilled to be with you. A California gym has set up socially distancing pods in their facility so you can work out in essentially bubbles. And I don't know if this is a template for other industries other than the gym, but certainly it might be working for them. They're very proud of it. They shared the images. It looks really strange. If you look it up, if you see this, it's a bunch of these square things that are see-through, plasticky. They look sort of like giant square bubbles, and people are working out in individual ones. I don't get how it totally works, though, because isn't part of the problem here that if you use the same facility as somebody else, you might wind up getting some of the germs they left there? And I don't know how they react to that, but it's a gym pod. They also made pipes out of shower curtains and other different things. So it's a little bit of a less than totally financially invested in project. It's a little bit DIY, but it looks interesting. Would we put that up at restaurants? Would you sit in your own little shower curtain bubble and have a meal? Or would you just stay at home at that point? Because what is the point? But it is interesting. The gym is Pete's Gym. It is only able to operate at half its usual capacity, allowing just 9 people in at a time. So it has 9 different workout stations that are fully draped and fully, safe and protected. They then provide the antibacterial wipes, the hand sanitizer, all the things you need to clean things up. It is just odd. It's odd to look at. It's odd to walk into, I assume, and it would be odd to try to seriously work out while there. But hey, the vending machine still works too, so that's good. This is Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
This is The Chad Benson Show.